أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المصطفى محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم واللعنة دائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. السلام عليك يا بقية الله في أرضه ويا حجته على عباده وعلى عمتك الحوراء زينب وجدك الكاظم ورحمة الله وبركاته. In our last lesson regarding how to build an Islamic household, which was a few weeks ago, I remember, we were speaking about appointing the judge. We were talking about the necessity of appointing the right and fair judge to judge between the husband and the wife if they ever go through unsolvable disagreements. And sometimes it's natural in many cases for a husband and a wife to disagree. جيد? Not just sometimes. In many cases, it's natural for them to disagree. But in some cases, or many cases, they're able to solve the disagreement. Then again, in some cases, they're not. جيد? So when they're in that state, when they go through a disagreement and each person adheres to his own opinion, it is wise, it would be wise to refer to the fair judge, the just judge, so that judge can judge between them. And once both of them accept the judgment and implement it, the disagreement will be gone. Who is that fair judge? In the Quran al-Kareem and Ahlul Bait alayhim as-salatu was-salam. We are mu'mineen. We're Muslims, we're mu'mineen, we believe in Ahlul Bait alayhim as-salam. Hence it is only wise, in fact it is necessary to always refer to Ahlul Bait salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim so we can receive guidance from the Imams. Ahlul Bayt don't only give us guidance in regards to prayer or fasting or mathalan beliefs. They present guidance regarding all fields, regarding all issues, regarding all matters. So they've presented advice regarding business transactions and how to do business. They've presented advice regarding marriage, how to get married. And they gave advice on that regard because they're the universal Imams, alayhim salam. They have to give us the advice that we need regarding any issue, regarding any matter that pertains to the human being or to mankind. So we learn from Imam Ali and Sayyidah Fatima alayhim salam to refer to Al-Quran and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam because they refer to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as we said. They refer to Rasulullah so he can tell them what are the duties of Amir al-Mu'mineen and what are the duties of Sayyidah Zahra salawatullah alayhima in regards to working or taking care of the house chores, right? And the Prophet said that Zahra alayhi salam is responsible of upholding the house chores, taking care of the house chores, and Amir al-Mu'mineen is responsible of working, meaning he's responsible of bringing sustenance into the house. Right. The last point we were mentioning was actually an example pertaining to the disagreement or kind of disagreement that might occur between a husband and his wife. We said, can a husband force his wife to remove the hijab? And the answer is no. If the husband, for some reason, tells his wife to remove the hijab and to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then she should not obey him. Even if he um, threatens to divorce her, because Allah's obedience comes first, subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same applies to other forms of disobedience. The hijab was just an example. If the husband, for example, commands his wife to stop speaking with her parents, to do what we call qat' al-rahim, right? To sever her ties with her parents. She can't do that. It's haram. Yes, she should respect her husband. Yes, she should, you know, treat him in a good manner, but he cannot force her, and he should not force her to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't have that authority. In fact, we learn from Imam Ali alayhi salam, as we've said many times, to be merciful husbands who are lenient. Husbands that do not force their wives to do certain matters, mubah matters, lawful matters, if they don't want to do it. Make sense? Yani, let me rephrase what I'm saying. Let me reword what I'm saying so that no one misunderstands me. When Imam Ali says, alayhi salam, that he never forced Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam to do something she did not want to do, he teaches us men to be what? To be lenient, to be merciful, and not to force our wives to perform various kinds of deeds that they do not want to perform when it is not necessary for them to perform such deeds. Make sense? Provided, of course, that, the deeds we're talking about are things that the husband can accept, and at the same time he can accept the absence of such deeds. Make sense? Right. So if the husband commands his wife to sever her ties with her parents, she can't obey him. The same applies to any form of disobedience. Here, it would be wise for the wife to remind her husband of what the Quran says, or what Ahlul Bait say, alayhimus salam, about Silat al-Rahim if he's telling her to sever her ties. Or about, let's say, intoxicants if he's telling her to drink wine and to consume intoxicants. Or about, let's say, gambling if he's telling her to gamble, so on and so forth. It would be wise for her to mention the Quranic verses or certain traditions that speak about the sin he is telling her to perform, so she can knock some sense into his mind and remind him that this is unlawful. And the opposite is also true. Sometimes a wife will tell her husband and will put him under pressure, will tell her husband to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, the wife might have an issue with some of the relatives of that husband, say his siblings, and she'll tell him, you know what, I want you to cut them off. He can't listen to her. He can't, it's haram. So he can remind her in that case of what? Of the ahadith, of the Quranic verses that speak about Silat al-Rahim and that speak about Qat' al-Rahim. So she understands that, she doesn't have the right to tell her husband to sever his ties with his relatives, let alone having the right to put pressure on him to do that deed. You don't have to mention names. Afan? Relatives. Yeah, and he can't disobey Allah because his wife is telling him to disobey Allah, and she can't do the same. واضح? So whenever someone tells you to disobey Allah, whoever that person is, whether it's a husband or a wife or a parent or a child, you can't disobey Allah. Allah's obedience comes first. Sometimes the child is the one who puts pressure on his parents and tells them to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes it's the other way around. جيد? Whoever says disobey God, خلاص, you can't listen to them.
Even if mom and dad, not to just stay away, just until we get the problem resolved.
Stay away from what?
Stay away from مثلا they got enough, like her mother and her brother got enough, and her brother got enough fight. And she's telling you, she's like, don't speak to them until we get like until he apologizes or like something like that. Don't you have obligation to? Of course, you have the obligation to Allah before your parents. Right? So that's it. I'm saying for now.
Yeah. If the mother is telling her child to sever ties with his maternal uncle, meaning her brother, then obviously he can't obey her on that regard. No. Yeah. Sometimes a wife might command her husband or tell her husband to indulge in unlawful jobs so he can bring money to the house. واضح? And I'm giving practical examples, things that sometimes we see in society. The husband will be put under pressure by his wife sometimes because she wants him to acquire a particular job which will lead him to muharramat, which will lead him to sins, because she wants what? She wants more money, she wants him to make more money so she can benefit and the kids, the children may benefit. Here he cannot listen to her. Then again, sometimes it's the other way around. The husband does haram, he indulges in an unlawful job because he wants to make money, and the wife tells him what? She says, don't disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is wrong. And he shouldn't be doing this because you're disobeying the Almighty. If she does that, then she would be fulfilling her role or part of her role as a good wife. Because the good wife is the wife that reminds you of your Lord and tells you to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not to disobey Allah azza wa jal, so you may acquire money or other worldly items and or pleasures. طيب, sometimes the disagreement might not pertain to lawful and unlawful issues, but it might pertain to other matters connected to the husband or the wife. Like what? For example, sometimes a husband demands his wife to give him her money. She has money. She has inherited, let's say, money from her father. Her father passed away, and she has inherited money from the dad. That money belongs to who? Belongs to her. If she wants to give her money to her husband, that's her choice. She can do that. But he can't force her. He can't say, listen, you're my wife, so now whatever you own becomes mine. No, that's not the case. It's not the case. Whatever she owns is hers. So if he puts pressure on her and she doesn't, feel like giving him the money she's inherited from her father, for one reason or another, she can simply tell him, let's refer to Ash-Shara. Let's look at, the Islamic laws and see what Islam says. Islam says what? Her money is hers. He doesn't have the authority, he doesn't have the right to force her to give him her money. Yes, as we said, if she wants to help him, if she wants to give him part of the money or all of the money, that's her choice. But he can't force her. Some husbands think, no, because she's my wife, now whatever she owns becomes mine. That's not the case. واضح? And the opposite is also true. suppose that a lady marries a wealthy man, and the man owns, mashallah, he owns lands, he has a large estate, he has a large capital, he has businesses, so on and so forth. So she says, now that I'm your wife, I own all of this. Or I'm your sharik, I'm your partner, your associate. So whatever you own, half of it belongs to me. He can say no. Now, if he wants to give her half of his possessions, he can. But she can't force him to give her half of his possessions. She can't, based on Islamic law. Yes, she deserves nafaqah. She deserves that he spends on her. He grants her the sustenance she needs. He gives her, let's say, food, drinks, clothing, shelter, medication, and the likes. Our fuqaha, of course, have explained the details regarding nafaqah. And they've said that his status, his his social status, and her social status must be taken into consideration when we want to determine how much nafaqah she deserves. When we want to determine, the amount of wealth and or sustenance that the husband has to give to his wife. I'm not going to go into that right now, but the fuqaha have mentioned the details of an-nafaqah. So yes, she can ask for her nafaqah. But she can't say that, now that I've married you and you have a fortune, all of your fortune belongs to me or half of it belongs to me. She can't do that. If they disagree on that matter, then simply they can remove the disagreement by doing what? By referring to Sharia, by referring to the Islamic laws. Again, don't get me wrong, yani, it's good for a husband to be lenient with his wife, and it's good for a wife to be merciful towards her husband, so on and so forth. It's good for them to help one another, right? But at the same time, it's bad for them to hurt each other, and it's bad for each spouse to transgress against the other spouse, or to make the other spouse feel like his rights are being violated, because that will lead to other kinds of problems. That in itself is wrong, and it will also lead to other kinds of problems. واضح? Any questions? Comments?
Whatever's yours is your wife, or whatever's hers is hers.
Whatever belongs to you belongs to your wife? لا. يعني مثلا if I own, let's say, a piece of land that cost me, let's say, $100,000. The value of the land is 100K. Okay? And I marry a lady. Now she owns the land as well? She doesn't.
Say that you have one.
Yep.
You can't go with it. Say you guys are at the house, right? You're sleeping. You can't go in her purse and take, say I said you need $20, you take $20 without her permission. What's hers is hers. But I heard that she can go without your permission and take like $20
Okay.
from your wallet without your permission.
What I know is she deserves a nafaqah. Now with a nafaqah, in regards to a nafaqah, he can give her money so she can buy the things that she needs, the food, the medication, etc., or he can get it for her. Yeah, he doesn't have to give her cash. Make sense? Ahsan. Make sense? هلا هلا بكم. Yeah. The same applies to any other issue on which they disagree or might disagree. It's always good to refer to a Sharia, to refer to the Quran al-Kareem and Ahlul Bait alayhim salat wassalam. When they go through, disagreements that seem unsolvable. Because I said this once and I'll always say it. We're mu'mineen. If we're mu'mineen, then we have to act like mu'mineen. We have to accept what our imams, what our prophet, what our God said, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jade.
Sheikh, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
If someone goes through divorce, is it also called nafaqah? Like whatever, is it the same thing? Nafaqah? Well, no, it's a different name.
What do you mean?
You know, like sometimes, like when a husband and wife gets divorced, like شرعيا شو بيطلع على like 10% of what he has, 20%. It's not fair to say she never worked for her to take 50-50. That's not right. But what's the right amount?
Well, if she gets divorced, then if he has not paid her mahar yet, if he has not paid her mahar, so suppose that he gave her part of the mahar, part of the dowry, and did not give her the second part, the latter part of the dowry, and it was set in the marriage that, in the marital contract, that he will give her her dowry when divorce or death takes place. Yani he'll give her the latter part of the dowry when divorce or death takes place. Then he will be obligated to pay her the latter part of the dowry. Secondly, he is obligated to give her her nafaqah, as we said, when they're married. If he refuses to do so, she can still demand him for the nafaqah after divorce, if he had not given her nafaqah when they were married. So suppose that someone married a lady for 10 or 20 years and he did not spend a dime on that lady. All right? Not a single dime. And she doesn't forgive him. Sometimes a lady forgives her husband. Okay? Divorce takes place, and before the divorce, she says, "Ana msamhatu." I forgive him. He doesn't have to give me anything. I just want to be divorced. If she forgives him and she lets go of that right, the right to demand for the nafaqah, then that's her choice. She can do that. But if she does not forgive him and she says, "No, I want the nafaqah," he never spent the dime, then it will be wajib on him to give her the amount he had to spend on her when they were married. So that will be dain fi dhimmatih, meaning he will be indebted to her.
Okay, thank you so much.
واضح إن شاء الله.
But she's not entitled to alimony or
What's alimony?
like under Canadian law, like when you get divorced, the richer spouse, whoever is richer makes more for a certain number of years, or maybe even for life sometimes, has to pay a certain amount, a certain percentage of their wages to the other spouse.
No.
So they're not entitled to it.
No.
It depends on the law, on the country, and on the situation. No. It could be for a few years, it could be for life.
No. So her belongings are hers, and his belongings are his. Done deal. So if they get divorced, based on Islamic law, if they get divorced, and suppose she owns, she owns a palace because she is a princess, for example. That palace is hers. It's not his. And similarly, if he's rich, he owns God knows how many lands and houses and apartments, etc., and he divorces her, those are his. Yeah.
What if something was bought and was bought jointly? What happens to that?
So both of them are owners in that case, right? Because it was bought jointly. So if something was bought with her money and his money, both would be owners of that item. But yes, the percentage, how much do they own of that thing, depends on on who paid the money and how much did they pay, right? Yeah.
So for example, what some people do is maybe only the husband is working, but anything they buy, they put in a joint deed or the joint account. And that's just so in case one dies, the other still has access to it without waiting for like laws and the death certificate and all of those things.
Right.
But in that case, if divorce were to happen, it would still technically be the property of whoever bought it. Even though legally they're jointly owned.
So let me just get this straight. So both of them have a joint account in the bank, صح? And the money of one of the two spouses is going into that account.
Yeah, the only money in that account technically was one of the spouses.
Okay.
But the account is joint.
Joint. And the husband or the wife, the spouse who's putting his money into that account, does he intend on giving that money to the other spouse?
I'm working on the example of my parents, right?
Yeah.
So they say our money is shared, but I don't know if like my dad is specifically saying I grant all of it to my mom, but just in case he says if I die, I don't want you guys to go through the whole thing of inheritance and this and that. You have access to the money even the second I die.
Yeah.
That's his only intention with putting the money in the joint account. Or like the house is jointly owned between my mom and my dad. But the entire payment was in my dad. Right?
What I can say right now to give you a precise answer is when someone gives you money, but he doesn't make you the owner. He just gives you money in the sense that he's leaving it with you or he's allowing you to use it, but he's not making you the owner, then the money still belongs to him. واضح? The money still belongs to him. In regards to banks specifically, I prefer to ask first before I give you an answer, just in case, because it's a bank, it has its own hukum, the bank account. So we'll ask about it and we'll follow up, inshallah. But in general, when I give you money or wealth or assets, but I don't give it to you in the sense that you've become the owner. I don't do tamlik. I don't say now you're the malik, you're the owner of this asset or this type of wealth. But I allow you to use it. I remain the owner. An example of this is matalan, the food and the drinks that you offer to your guests. When they come over, you're offering them food and drinks, right? Okay. What does that mean? It means they can use it. But who's the owner? You. So when they leave, the remainder of the food and the remainder of the drinks belong to who? To you, not to them. صح? But you're giving them these foods and drinks with إذن في التصرف. You give them permission to use it.
And just so I have the whole thing. That would
Ahmad Sarah?
Sheikh, inheritance, is the inheritance just for the children or does it also for the spouse?
No, it applies to the spouse as well. The spouse, the husband, inherits his wife and the wife inherits her husband. صحيح. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على المصطفى محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.